This podcast is recorded on stolen and unceded Aboriginal land.
We acknowledge the First Nations and elders of this country, and we join their calls for justice.
Jim Malo,
Emerald Moon.
when you become an Australian MP and you get to give your first speech, the convention being that no one can interrupt you or like hassle you while you give your first speech, what are you going to say?
I'll probably start with communism will win and then read out what is to be done by Lenin. How about that? If they can't stop me, right? Like, might as well just go hell for leather.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's as much as they can stand to just stand there while you speak. So
maybe I'll start a new tradition, like actually getting dragged out of the chamber.
Dragged out of the chamber as opposed to dragged to the chair, which we'll talk about.
Talk about the Greens, that bunch of idiots.
If you want the dole for life, free marijuana, vote Greens.
These people, these Greens, they are snake oil salesmen.
They want to destroy the social fabric of society.
They hate our society.
Frankly, I've always found the Greens to be a real serious danger to Australia.
Hello everybody, this is Serious Danger. It's a show about green politics in Australia. It is not an official Greens Party podcast. It is made possible with the help of the Green Institute and it's produced by Michael Griffin. This week, because Tom is still away, we have a special co-host again. It's Jim Malo, Deputy Editor of Pedestrian and prolific poster. How you going, Jim?
I'm doing great. I'm having an absolutely brilliant time. Thanks for having me on the show.
Of course, finally. You kept asking.
Thank you for introducing me as a prolific poster. I feel like I'm finally being recognised for my greatest achievement.
Well, you can't really claim it until you get to, 1 million posts that one woman has?
Yeah, Susie.
Labour hack?
Yeah, she's real weird. And every single one of those posts makes absolutely no sense to anyone but her.
Well, that's true poster energy.
Absolutely.
You can only dream. But look, this week we are, of course, chatting about the first week of Parliament, first week of the 47th Parliament, the ceremonies, the stunts, the speeches, etc. I will be telling Jim about all the conventions, the insane parliamentary conventions that he doesn't know exist. And then we are going to be chatting about all the fuss over the Pride round for the NRL and the Manly players refusing to wear the Pride jersey.
Upon conclusion of the ceremony of welcome, members are summoned by the bells to the House of Representatives chamber, where each member takes his or her allocated seat. The Sergeant-at-Arms, an officer of the House with important ceremonial and administrative duties, places the mace, the symbol of the House's authority, on the brackets below the table. The Clerk of the House, head official of the Department of the House of Representatives, reads the Governor-General's proclamation, calling the Parliament together.
You excited?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about it. I feel like I'm keen to hear about these conventions. It's the ones I have heard so far sound insane, but it's always the way with all this stuff, isn't it? It's like people love to dress up their colonial government with as much pomp and sort of like whimsy as possible when they're doing all sorts of heinous shit. So
it's just British shit. It's just British shit.
I'm still not convinced England is a real place, to be honest.
Yeah, well. I mean, I noticed there were a bunch of articles that specifically used the term pomp and ceremony at the start of the week or like leading into the week. They were like, we start with the pomp and ceremony, of course, especially with the swearing in of the new MPs. Were you closely following the swearing ins?
Mercifully, I was working in a place, I'm in Brisbane at the moment, I'm usually in Melbourne, and I was working in a place where I didn't have a television, so I didn't have ABC 24 on like I typically would, so I mercifully missed it all.
You can like stream stuff on your computer?
Yeah, but I'd rather not.
I actually didn't catch the moments of the swearing in, but I was getting like a stream of photos as our new Greens MPs were being sworn in with captions like, like our beautiful boy, sweet angels, etc. It was pretty fucking surreal, honestly, to see like just these people that you know and love, and honestly, you kind of dreamed that they would end up in there, but you didn't really want to believe it, and now they're fucking there. It's insane.
Yeah, that photo of all four of them standing up at the dispatch boxes was something else. So
it's so cute. It's so cute. And Adam's face in that photo where he's looking up at the camera, just like, I've got friends. It's very sweet. Did you see Lydia Thorpe's tweet about the oath or the affirmation that you still have to give when you're sworn in as a parliamentarian?
Yeah, she took issue with the fact that you still have to swear allegiance to the Queen. Is that right?
Yeah, what you have to say is, I, name, do solemnly and sincerely affirm and declare that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors according to law. Every single one of our MPs has to
How
say
does a
that.
get fucked sound? It's terrible, eh? I mean, like, obviously that's the case. Like, that's how our government is structured. We're a constitutional democracy, rah, 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 whatever. But it's kind of fucked, isn't it? Like,
It's
honestly,
insane.
you'd think we'd be past that at this point, but
You'd think so. But we have a beautiful blend of tradition and modernity in the Australian Parliament.
where's the modernity come into it?
Well, I guess actually I say modernity, but it's like the reintroduction of an ancient tradition, which is acknowledging the country that you're on, which some people take issue with. That's the debate, right? So Pauline Hanson obviously fucking stormed out of the chamber like the racist brat that she is during acknowledgement of country. And is like, it's not a real Indigenous tradition because apparently she would fucking know. I mean, and like I debated, I was like, should we even talk about this? Because obviously what she wants is attention, right?
Well, yeah. But I mean, it doesn't change the fact that she is doing something racist and awful and should be called out on it, I think. Like I do get the argument of like, don't give it airtime. But I feel like if you are, while you're giving it airtime, you're giving it the respect it deserves and deriding it, I think that does tend to make it a little bit better. Like that's sort of how I make myself feel. And also like, this is not the case for, all media publications, but at Pedestrian, we can be very clear about how we feel about it. And I'm pretty sure we called her a racist, except like the cyst was like
what?
CYST, like a thing filled with
okay,
pus.
Racist.
Yeah,
That's a pun. Good one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
You guys like those?
Yes, we do like those. Journalists love puns. So, that was kind of like, that feels kind of a little bit better, but I mean, not everyone will be doing that. And I think a lot of people will be presenting her views in a way that doesn't clearly show how awful and racist it is, stunt or no.
It does also blow my mind that even progressive, I'm pretty sure it was like The Guardian, that still does not know the difference between an acknowledgement and a welcome to country.
Yeah. As soon as I learnt that, I was like, okay, no
it's
worries.
Very basic.
Yeah, it is very obvious, isn't it? I feel like I learnt it at an embarrassingly late stage, but still like, once you've been told, you should know. But anyway.
Yeah, but I still very regularly see people just using them interchangeably.
So was that the case with the coverage of this?
Yeah, I actually didn't know. Like that's what I had to check. I was like, was there a welcome to country or was it just the acknowledgement? And could tell that they were talking about the acknowledgement, but it was referred to in multiple places as the welcome to country, and in others as an acknowledgement. I mean, for anyone who is, maybe it's like for anyone who's listening does know the difference. Welcome to country would be when it's like a ceremony performed by an elder on their traditional land to welcome you. You would have seen this. Sometimes there's dancing, might be singing, might just be a speech, something like that to welcome you onto their country. Acknowledgement is is something that you would say to acknowledge the country that you are on. You would often hear it as, I acknowledge the traditional owners or custodians of the land, pay my respects to elders past and present. So now you know.
Thank you, Emerald.
You're welcome. Love to, just teach people about just two non-Indigenous people on a podcast.
Yep.
Just teaching people about Indigenous traditions. But yeah, speaking of traditions, the fun conventions. Let's get to it. Like before we recorded, I was like, Jim, do you want to talk about the weird conventions in Parliament? And you like, what do you mean? And I was like, like paper on the head, dragging the speaker to the chair. And you were like, whoa.
Yeah. So can we start with the paper on the head thing? Like I specifically didn't ask for any explanation before because like I wanted to be able to learn about it on the podcast. Like what the fuck is that?
I can't believe you haven't heard of this. So it just like most of these things come from the British House of Commons, obviously, or like British Parliament. And the idea, it's that you put a bit of paper on your head when you want to speak or get the attention of the speaker during a division, because traditionally in the House of Commons, you stand up to get their attention, to be like, hey, mate, I want to speak. But during a division, as in like a vote, everyone's standing up, everyone's moving around the chamber, it's chaos. And so if you want to get their attention, you have to put something on your head. So it could be like a hat or something else, but a bit of paper is common because you'll probably have one in your hand.
You're also not allowed to wear a hat in the chamber, are you?
Well, maybe not anymore, but you must have used to, like you probably, maybe it's like you had it off and then you would pick it up off your little desk and put it on your head. I don't know.
Okay, so and what is the relevance on the first day, or is this something that they do all the time?
No, this isn't to do with the first day. This is just I was thinking about Parliament things.
I actually thought that maybe like Max, like Chandler Mather got up to do his first speech and like before he did it, he had to like ritually place a piece of paper on his head. So that's why I was laughing at that. I didn't realize it was like I feel like that would come up very, very rarely, surely, because they don't.
Well, and the other thing is it's actually not technically a thing in Australian Parliament. Like it's not mentioned anywhere in the rules or anything like that.
But we just do it because we're cucks.
Well, the agreement is meant to be that you wait for the bells to stop ringing, the division to be over, and then you can speak. Like them's the rules. But some people just love the funny British tradition, and so like they keep it going and will put something on their head.
Wow, that's cringe. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's pretty cringe.
All right, next one. This could be like a game of cringe or based. Why don't we do that?
Cringe or based. Okay, yeah, sure. All right. Well, what about you don't refer to the houses, like when you are in the chamber. So if you're in the House of Representatives, for example, you normally wouldn't refer to the Senate by name. You refer to it as the other place. Do you know this one?
No, I didn't know that. I didn't realize. Actually, maybe I did know it. It's ringing a slight bell, but like, what's the story behind it?
Yeah. So apparently, and I didn't know the reason. I just knew this was a convention. You will hear people refer to in this place as for the chamber that they're in, and they'll say, well, in the other place they might discuss this, blah blah blah, to talk about the Senate or the House if you're in the Senate. When I looked it up, this is according to wikipedia.com, so could be fake. But they say, quote, the reasons for the tradition are unclear, but it has been suggested that it dates back to a period of ill feeling between the two houses of, again, the UK Parliament, ding ding. Similarly, a member talking of their own house would refer to it as this place. But then, it says the universities of Oxford and Cambridge also refer to each other as the other place, as do the pupils of the British public schools, Eton and Harrow. So it's like this fancy thing where you're like, ooh, we're enemies, like, so I'm not going to name you.
For the listeners, I'm making a dismissive wanking gesture.
Did you ever do debating in school?
Yeah, I did actually, surprisingly.
Weren't you taught? I remember distinctly, like one of the first things that we were taught was you don't directly refer to the other team. You always just say the opposition. I mean, I guess it's the same as in Parliament. You can't refer to people by name.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
have to say the opposition or the member for so-and-so.
Like, I get it, but it just seems like a stupid tradition. But like, I feel like this is going to be a running theme with this. But like, the more I hear about these things that have these like arcane roots in English, aristocracy.
That's it.
I'm like, why? Why do we care? Why do we bother? And I feel like even if we became a republic, we would carry on with some of this stuff because we are like an eternally like cucked nation. Sorry to use that word again, but it's like it's kind of like we define ourselves in relation to all these other countries and all these other things that have no real bearing on us or who we are as a nation now, the so-called nation, I guess.
Are you saying cringe?
Yes, it's cringe. Yeah, sorry. I thought I got that with the dismissive wanking.
Wanking is cringe.
Yeah.
Disagree, but.
That's why it's dismissive. Anyway, what's the next one?
All right. The next one is dragging the speaker to the chair. Surely you heard about this week.
No, absolutely
I don't know
not.
how you missed this. Like they literally elected the speaker and he was physically dragged to the speaker's chair. Aren't you a journalist?
Yes, but like I wasn't paying attention to all this shit because do you think like I'm going to write like what the people who read Pedestrian are going to read like something about dragging Milton Dick to a chair?
I think they might. I think it's a funny fact. Okay, well.
Actually, no, you know what they would read? They would read about everyone referring to Milton Dick as an absolute unit.
Absolute unit.
And you know what? I'm interested in that too because he is. He's a unit. Yeah. Yep. This was the new speaker of the House elected this week, Milton Dick. He did feature on that Reddit thread, Absolute Units, because he's big. He's massive. And his brother, Cameron Dick, Treasurer of Queensland, because, fucking nepotism and political class. Yeah, he's not so large. Like I'm not going to say it.
Well, that he's the little dick.
Yeah,
and
you can say it.
Milton's the big dick.
Yep.
They're really asking for it though. And
Yeah,
did you
a
see
little
like
bit.
some people, Labor politicians like posting their ballot when they voted for the speaker and it's just got in massively like, who do you vote? And it just says dick. Which I love.
I know, like more power to these blokes. And sorry if either of you listen to this podcast, which I doubt you will.
What? Cameron Dick and Milton Dick?
Yeah.
You think they're listeners?
Absolutely not. Anyway, and even if they were, like, I'm very sorry. But if my last name and if anyone else's name is Dick, I'm sorry for what I'm about to say. But if it was my name, I'd change it.
You'd change it?
Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, and Anastasia Palaszczuk, Queensland Premier, she's such good friends with Milton Dick, with the Dicks, that she like flew down to Canberra in the middle of fucking estimates hearings. Her government is meant to be having estimates hearings for their budget. And she went to Canberra to hang out with her friend Big Dick because she was excited that he's the speaker.
Milton has previously, he used to be a councillor, didn't he? And then he ran for state government.
I think so, something
So
like that.
I think he unsuccessfully ran for either Maiwar or one of the adjacent seats.
Oh, well, sucked in.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the getting. So he was dragged by the people who said that he should be speaker, who nominated him and maybe the seconder. They physically drag him to the chair and he has to be like, no, stop. I don't want to. Which apparently comes from like that people would be genuinely reluctant to be elected as the speaker, right? Because they would then be the spokesperson for a group of legislators who might be doing something that the royalty, that the crown doesn't like. And so that they could get killed or, otherwise harmed.
Do people think this is fun? Is this fun?
I think, well, it's such a miserable place, right, that they have to, that's what I mean. I think you're right. If we became a republic, they would keep these conventions because what the fuck else do we have in that hellhole?
Surely they could just do what normal people do with high-powered jobs and just do a bunch of coke.
Maybe. Well, he can afford it, yeah. So even though he's like reluctantly dragged to the chair, the poor thing gets an extra $160,000 on top of his salary for the pleasure of being speaker.
Should we even get into that, or have you already done that?
No, not even.
Okay.
That's a whole, yeah. So those were the conventions that I was thinking of. The other one is the one that before you give your first speech, you're not allowed to address the chamber. You're not allowed to speak unless you say, this is not my first speech. You know that one?
No, but again, pointless and stupid. Cringe.
Pointless and stupid. Well, it means like you could literally, so Penny Allman-Payne, for example, new Green senator, wanted to speak this week on teacher, school funding and pay for teachers, but she has to stand up and say, even though it's literally her first speech in the House, in the Senate, and she has to stand up and say, this is not my first speech before she starts, so that no one's confused.
I don't think anyone's confused with the people listening at home, to be honest, but anyway.
Okay, well, I mean, did you watch any of the first speeches, the Greens?
Nope.
Greens MP speeches? Can't
No.
believe it.
Don't read theory. Don't listen to speeches.
I don't know. It was pretty cute. Like the first speech is obviously, that's like your debut. That's like it's the Parliament equivalent of the first confessional in a reality show where you like sit down, you're like, "G'day, I'm Laura. I'm from Essex, and I'm here to show you what a beachy girl I am." So this week we had Stephen and then we had Libby.
Yeah, I wish I had seen Stephen's because like I've heard a lot about it since.
Stephen's speech in particular, it was very moving.
Yeah.
I cried. We were all sitting there watching it in the office crying. It was beautiful. So you didn't see any of the other, I didn't watch any of the other first speeches. Like obviously I watched Libby's and Stephen's, but all the other MPs giving their first speeches, including Colin Boyce, the new member for Flynn.
Is this going to be weird?
He's a climate denier.
Oh my God.
So he's obviously LNP guy, and he's a former Queensland state MP.
Oh no. I'm looking at a photo of him. Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah, this guy. And I think in his first speech in Queensland Parliament as well, he was just going on about how climate change isn't real. And there's just one bit so he was talking about how bad hydrogen is in his first speech. Imagine writing your first speech and you're like, okay, this is like my political vision. This is what I'm passionate about. Like, this is my theory of change, who I am.
What did hydrogen do to this man?
Oh, I'll tell you what hydrogen's done. Maybe not exactly to him, but in Colin Boyce's words, Hydrogen is extremely dangerous. It is extremely flammable, got a chemist on our hands, and has specific qualities that make industrial quantities of hydrogen very difficult to produce, store, transport, and use, he said. And now listen to these examples that he's given. In 1937, the Zeppelin exploded. 1986, Space Shuttle Challenger exploded. 2011, Fukushima, Japan nuclear reactor plant exploded. And more recently and close to home, Callide C4 coal-fired generator exploded.
That's got nothing to do with hydrogen.
These are all catastrophic hydrogen explosions, apparently.
Fucking hell. Who's he with? Is he with the Libs?
Yeah, no, LNP, of course.
Did he elect Liberal or National?
It's Queensland is joined. They're the same.
No, I know, but they have to select a federal party room, don't they?
No, I don't think so. Not Queensland.
Well, think about it. We've got
if they've got different party rooms.
We've got Lou O'Brien and Keith Pitt. They both elected to be Nationals.
I don't know.
Oh, look, I could teach you about a convention.
Maybe
look at that. Wacky
convention.
dude.
Well, you can find out. I mean, he sounds like a national, right?
Yeah, you would think so. Did he replace someone or did he?
Yeah, who was Flynn before?
This is insane.
Yeah, he's absolutely insane. I can't remember I should know who the Flynn guy was.
That's right.
Anyway, question for another time. Listeners, write in. Who was the member for Flynn?
Don't write into me. I won't see it.
Write into me. Well, those are the fun parts. Those are the fun bits.
Well, he'll be interesting.
You think he'll be interesting?
Oh, yeah. He'll be a fun one. Like, he's probably going to be with the Nats. He seems about as nutty as the rest of them.
He's got to be. I reckon he'll be a Nat.
Yeah.
I reckon he'll be a Nat.
Well, tell me more about Stephen's speech.
Oh, he spoke about kind of like the experiences that shaped his politics and his path to get, elected. He spoke about, there's this story that I've heard before, but it's still like, it's very good about. It's
cute if you've heard it for the first time, but I had heard it before.
I mean, it's true. He does tell it a lot, to be fair. But I actually knew it was.
I don't need to be sad. I miss it. I can just wait till I see him and bump into him somewhere, and he'll tell me.
And ask him how he got into politics. It's true. Before he spoke, I was like, can't wait to hear the insulin story. And then as soon as we turned on the TV, he was like telling the insulin story about how he worked at Disneyland in the States, and he came into a stockroom, and a colleague was crying on the floor, and he was like, "What's wrong?" And she was having to choose between paying for insulin or paying the rent, and he was like,
"It hit me all at once. This is not a society that puts people first. It values profit above all else. I could not allow that to happen in my home."
Yeah. Could we actually share, what was the moment that radicalized you? Do you want to?
I don't know.
You don't know? Oh, my God.
No, it's just a series of things. I feel like my experience of being a renter my whole life is like my foundational story. What, do you have a moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I was watching the telly when I think Labor announced that they were going to do offshore processing. And I was like, oh, wow. So even the good guys, they're kind of the bad guys. And I was like, well, it doesn't matter. What was it? You can't come to Australia if you're on a boat or whatever. But I could clearly see the subtext was like, it doesn't matter if you're brown, you're not coming here. And I was like, wow, this is kind of fucked. Looks like I don't have a choice but to be politically aware for the rest of my life.
Yeah. And obviously Stephen's other kind of the other part of his speech and the bit that got the most coverage was he was talking about coming out and growing up gay, and he just was struggling to deliver it because obviously it was really hard to talk about in fucking Parliament. And just that he didn't really see many people around him, particularly in public life, who were gay, and he had decided that he was going to just pretend to be straight and get married because that was the only way to do it. But then when he came out, he promised himself that he would be openly gay and kind of, be that person for other people that he didn't have when he was growing up.
Yeah.
It was very good. It was a great speech.
It actually means a lot more than people think, I think, than, representation. I know it is a bit of okay, we're past that when we talk about diversity. But, when I was young, it was the same problem, you can't see anyone like you in those positions. So it's hard to imagine yourself like that. And I even remember one time my sister was crying in a room because she got a magazine and there were no black models. So I get it. I feel it.
Didn't you say that you're probably the most senior African journalist in Australia? at the moment?
Yeah, probably as far as I know, and as far as a couple of my friends know.
Yeah.
And for that to be like a niche youth publication is pretty poor. Like it should already be the case, but I feel like Africans are like a little bit behind when it comes to like sort of like being integrated into Australian society because I don't think there was a lot of us here until like the 90s. A lot of us here. Yeah, maybe I'm not putting that exactly the right way because I could be, because don't forget there was that awful documentary that was like Africans were here when Australia was colonized. We helped. But like, I don't think in any like great numbers. And like me personally, I'm from Madagascar, wearing a little shirt. You can see it, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something like only 900 of us in Australia. So even then.
Really?
It's tiny.
I didn't realize that.
When I last went to the consulate, I asked the consul and he was like, yeah, not many of us.
Special. Very special. But that's the other thing. Like I wish that kind of the second part of Stephen's speech about when he was talking about being gay was covered as much as just his personal story, because he then did go on to say it's not enough to just be gay in Parliament and to wave the rainbow flag and to,
wow.
That's representation. Representation is like fighting for the legislative change and the meaningful action in government that actually helps our community. So
damn, what a goat. That's great.
He's sick cunt.
I spent years hiding myself because I could not see anyone in my world who was openly gay. This is so much harder than I thought it would be. I made a promise to myself once I came out that if I ever, found myself in a public role, that I would be open and proud of who I am, hence all the rainbow gear. That I would be that person that I never saw growing up. Because if I can help even one person out there, then my life will have been worth it.
I want to quickly just chat about, in terms of the first week of Parliament, in the same way that first speech is meant to kind of set the tone for your work as an MP, do you think that this first week in Parliament, is this like a window into what the 47th Parliament is going to look like?
Yeah, probably. I think it probably is it's looking better than it actually will be. I think that's probably about like where I think it's going to end up and sort of how the first week has sort of been. Like it's kind of like rolling a turd in glitter, I think. Like we've already started with the like Labor is like, making a lot of like, good looking moves, but not necessarily making moves that actually will affect change in a meaningful way. Particularly the climate legislation, I think, is one good example of that. It's not the best example, but it's a good example. Sort of saying that, okay, we're going to make nice with the Greens so we can get this, across the line, and agreeing to have a 43% emissions reduction floor instead of, sort of like a vague target. I think that's really good. I think that's like we're at a point there where, they're sort of like, making a gesture of goodwill. But the fact that they won't say no to any new coal or gas or fossil fuels or whatever, that's kind of that's kind of what we need to do.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And I really feel like Labor have kind of fucked this up strategically as well, right? Like,
do you think?
Yeah, I really don't think that they're winning the perception, the whatever the word is, like the media battle for a while. And not that they haven't fucking tried and that mainstream media haven't made it very easy for them to, with all the shit about Greens needing to come to the table. I do feel like it's been dragged back around now. And after all this time of Labor being like, we won't negotiate, nothing. And then these headlines being like, government to rewrite climate bill to win over Greens, which is ironic because on the one hand, I'm like, fuck, that makes us look great. It makes us look very powerful, and it also makes Labor look stupid. And it undoes that idea of like, a lot of people being frustrated that Labor and the Greens won't work together. It's like, look, they're negotiating. But at the same time, it's like, well, they're not exactly rewriting the bill, are they? Like, it's still completely inadequate.
I think that still could be a win for Labor, be like, a strategic win, because like it does sort of position it as them, like, even though they're not really making a big capitulation, it does sort of like headlines like that positions Labor as being the ones who are being reasonable and sort of like, extending the olive branch, even though it is sort of like the barest token gesture. And I think that's probably intentional from Labor. But that being said, yes, you're right. The tone of the framing has shifted slightly.
I've seen it. Yeah, I think there's a pretty, like, I think people have seen through what they were trying to do, which was make it seem like they're doing something that's actually quite good and the Greens are just being obstructionists. So I don't think anyone really buys that. I think people are sick of it.
Yeah.
But their whole, like the ending the climate wars thing, I mean, it's just such fucking bullshit, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, maybe they actually feel like they're doing that. Like, if I want to give them like the benefit of the doubt, like
who were the climate wars with? Who are they between?
I don't know. Like, I don't even know what the fuck that fucking means, Like, it just seems like a bit of a it seems like one of those media inventions that sort of doesn't really, like, it's easy for people to say, like, all the climate wars, but doesn't actually convey anything necessarily meaningful.
Yeah. But it's true. They have been doing, like, they've done some good things.
Yep.
And they've been seemingly quite ambitious. They're like, we're going to do all these things in the first 2 weeks of Parliament sitting. They've done the introduction of domestic and family violence leave, 10 days of paid leave. That's great.
Yep.
The thing about scrapping that High Court challenge regarding deporting Aboriginal non-citizens or Aboriginal people who couldn't prove their citizenship.
Although I am willing to bet any money that had that actually gotten through before the Libs got kicked out, they would not have rescinded it. Like, I genuinely think if the High Court challenge had gotten through and like the law was like it said like you can actually make an Indigenous person stateless or take away their citizenship, Labor would have left the law in place and been like, it's too divisive to change, and then just sort of like not applied it, and then therefore leaving it open for whoever comes in next time to turn around and enact more cruelty on people unnecessarily.
Well, because they're a status quo party, like that's. And that was the other thing this week. They were like, we're going to scrap the Inju card.
This is what I was talking about before when I was saying like this is the best example, I think, of how it's going to go. This is exactly right.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's really that thing where they're doing something and you're like, wow, this is fantastic. And a lot of people I spoke to were even like, oh, we didn't think they would actually do it. And I was like, but are they just scrapping the Inju card? Turns out, yes, they're just scrapping Inju, cashless debit card, and they're retaining the basics card used in the NT. And I'm not sure if this is 100% confirmed yet, but like pretty clearly indicated that they're looking at expanding the use of the basics card outside of the NT to more people. And so they're still doing compulsory income management.
It's fucked. It's like, this is unambiguously evil. Like what do they have to get out of this other than satisfying some nebulous sense that like people who are on the dole or on welfare are just fucking bludgers and like they don't like actually contribute to society. Like if we have like a fucking like if our economy is geared in a way that has like a unemployment target that exists to keep wages low so inflation doesn't run away, like how can you honestly say that like this is not unnecessarily cruel if there are people who want to work who they will not be helping get into work?
Yeah, well, and it's not to mention like the racist, paternalistic side of it, it's about, primarily it's going to be used with Aboriginal people, Aboriginal welfare recipients who apparently, don't know how to manage their money and will just spend it all on alcohol. Yeah, it's cool stuff. It's really good. So you're right. This is the perfect example of what we are probably looking at for the Labor government. So can't wait. Whee!
Yeah, I feel like the climate stuff actually, they are like the overperforming my expectations there. But yes, with the keeping the basics card is like exactly the sort of soulless neoliberalism I expect from them.
And they're doing their expectation management. Did you see? I think it was, on Thursday that Jim Chalmers, Treasurer, was warning everyone, like, watch out, we're going to be fucking you really bad over the next few years and just get ready for austerity because tough times are coming. Thanks to who? Tough times are coming? Maybe the government that's giving billions and billions of dollars in tax cuts to the wealthiest people in the country. And The other thing, first vote in the Senate. I don't even know what other votes happened. I wasn't following it
Sorry,
that
do you mean
closely this week.
the other place?
The other place. Sorry. Well, because I'm not in the House of Representatives right now. If I were, then I would say the other place.
Okay.
You're really
My
not
mistake.
getting it, Jim.
Yeah, sorry.
You're not going to make it to Parliament at this rate.
I'm definitely not going to make it to Parliament if I'm going to stand up there and say communism will win either.
Yeah, Max made it. So we'll see what he says in his first speech.
Anyway.
But the other one, just a classic, classic major parties. First vote that happened in the Senate, 47th Parliament, were both major parties and the UAP voting together against a simple rule change that would have allowed John Steele John to chair the Joint Committee on the NDIS as a disabled person. Did you see this?
What?
You look surprised.
Yeah, I am. I think the thing I'm most surprised about, not the obvious evil intent there. It's more like there's a rule that's preventing him from doing so.
Yeah, well, it's because the rule said that it would be, I presume, something like, one member of the government or a member of the opposition, and that's how you elect someone as the chair and someone as the deputy chair to come from government and opposition, and it didn't refer to minor parties, and so the change was just to insert or a minor party.
I'm pretty sure Sarah Hanson-Young has chaired a committee, hasn't she? Am I
about, maybe it was specifically for the NDIS, because they're definitely
that's so fucked.
It's pretty fucked. And apparently, I hear that it's not like they just moved, the Greens get accused of just moving motions and making a fuss about the major parties voting together against it, and it's all a stunt and they just want to make them look bad. But my understanding is they had genuinely been in negotiations with both major parties and being like, look, this is a good idea, right? Can we get your support for Jordan, the only person in the Senate with a disability or who openly identifies as disabled, to be the chair of the Joint Committee on the NDIS. And they were like, we'll think about it. And then when it came to it, they were like, nah, just kidding. And supporting the Greens change was Pocock and Lambie. Again, Lambie comes through on the randomest things. Yeah. She gave a fantastic speech.
Problematic auntie.
I think we should put the audio or a bit of audio from her speech where she was just ripping into the government or ripping into the major parties, as she does so well, about their fucking refusal to allow the people that their decisions actually affect to have any meaningful power over how those decisions are made. Go off, problematic queen.
If somebody knows about disabilities in this Senate chamber, it is Senator Steele John. There is no debating this. I really wish you would start thinking outside the square, because quite frankly, if you haven't noticed, major parties are going out the door. This is happening. This is happening. Okay, you have a bloke that lives this, he breathes this, he knows everybody in the sector. It makes it that easy. Isn't this the person that you would want in the deputy chair over chair? Isn't this the person that these people out there want representing them, to have the strongest voice possible where it matters most? Based on merit, because he's earned it. He's earned this. But I know, because tradition is more important than humanity and doing the right thing in this chamber. When are you going to learn? When are you going to start paying merit to people who deserve it? And not because they're in your faction or they're over on this faction. Because this is how it works in here, people of Australia. It doesn't work. It's not the best person for the job in here. It's whether you're mates with someone or you're in a certain faction. This has to stop. This is killing politics in this country and is not giving the people that need a voice a fair go. It's got to stop. You want a fair go, you talk about a fair go over here, Labor. Right, you talk about merit, fair go. There he is. He's earned it. And by God, has he earned it. We will be voting for you to be the chair, mate.
So, Emeralds, are you following the Manly Sea Eagles drama?
I wouldn't say I followed it incredibly closely, but it's been pretty unavoidable.
Yeah, it has, isn't it? Yeah, I feel like this is a rare sort of thing where like, non-sporty people tend to care about sports ball, even though you do love your league, greatest sport on earth.
I don't follow the NRL really at the moment.
Anyway, so basically 7 Manly Seagulls players refused to wear a Pride jersey, which is like, whatever. But
had rainbow on it.
Yeah, it had a rainbow on it. And this is like, setting aside the hypocrisy of like sort of wearing something like a gambling ad on it, which clearly is a worse social ill than homosexuality, I would probably safely say.
Pretty safe.
Yeah. So basically they put on a turn about it. They weren't happy, and they sort of said that they, because, it's their Pacifica culture that is stopping them from, being okay with gay people. And it's more specifically.
It was 6 out of the 7 players, right? A Pacifica.
Yes. 6 out of the 7. Yeah. So whatever's going on with the other guy, I guess that's his own problem. Yeah. So essentially they're all like, no, we're not going to wear it because this is, it goes against our culture. And what they're sort of saying there is like the recent and strong tradition of Christianity and Pacifica culture. And basically what happened was these guys all boycotted, and then the coach or whoever it is, the owner or the manager or whatever the fuck, I don't know. I don't follow NRL.
The coach. He
came out and he was like, we handled this poorly. Like, like we're so sorry. And I feel like that is sort of like pretty poor from him. But the whole saga has sort of just like, like bounced from like here to there. Like first they pulled out, and then the debutantes that they were going to get on pulled out. And then they were like, we're going to call the
to
cop.
replace them.
Apparently there was like a little period where they were struggling to replace them. But the Daily Telegraph reported it, but they later retracted the story. So I think either they got something wrong there, or something changed or whatever. I don't know. I don't talk to people in the Daily Telegraph much, so I don't really know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so like there was just a lot of like messy drama around it all week. And it even got to a point where the 7 weren't allowed to actually attend the game at all. And they were like, we'll call the cops if you show up.
Weren't allowed?
Yeah.
I thought they were like, well, we're just not going to attend.
I think there was a bit of both. So it's like
a you can't fire me, I quit thing.
Yeah. So anyway, the thing I found the most interesting about this was sort of like hiding behind the Pacifica heritage as a means to be homophobic, because as we know, Israel Folau did that with his whole if you're gay, you're going to hell thing. Is that what he said?
Yes.
Fucked. So bad.
Effectively, yes. Yes, something to that effect.
Anyway, so what was your take on it? How do you feel being brought up to speed in a haphazard manner?
Now that I've been brought up to speed, I mean, well, yeah, like I do. My basic take is the one that most people in my orbit have, which is that it's ridiculous and they should wear the fucking jersey and who cares. And being gay is actually much better than being straight. That's my take. But I actually, because I hadn't been on Twitter a whole lot and I hadn't delved into the discourse too much, I didn't come too much across the discourse about like this being a question of cultural freedom and religious freedom. But then I did read that article today. I can't remember the name of the author, but a Fijian man. And I think it was in The Age or Sydney Morning Herald maybe, saying the angle basically was don't blame queerphobia on Pacifica players, blame it on colonialism, and talking about the fact that queerphobia, homophobia, even the gender binary, compulsory heterosexuality is a very imperialist notion. It's a very colonialist notion, and it was something that was imposed upon Indigenous cultures, including in the Pacific Islands. When I learned about that, I think in my little gender studies classes, it was in the context of of Canadian First Nations, but it's still something that's fucking overlooked to this day. Yeah, this idea that like Pacifica people or Indigenous people are innately homophobic, and it's not something that was imposed as part of like by Christian missionaries as part of colonialism.
So I actually find this to be a very interesting conversation because like, obviously like my family are from a country that was colonized as well. And like my family aren't homophobes. And there is a degree of like these people need to own their own bigotry as well. Like we can't necessarily.
And your family are religious, right?
Yeah, they're very And my father is actually a priest. It still is. He's Catholic, so that caused a bit of trouble, but and still does. That's another topic for another time. But yeah, this idea that like people of color, people in the global South, can trace all of their social ills back to white people is also like kind of like paternalistic and like a little bit patronizing. So it's a very interesting conversation to me because the person who made me rethink that actually is a white person. Zizek is one of the people who sort of puts forward this idea that at a certain point, these people need to own their own problems. And I think I'm not Pacifica, but like I do think at a certain point that this is a conversation that needs to be had within their communities, and whether or not they can be honest with themselves about their history of Christianity and their history prior to Christianity, where sexualities and gender were a lot more fluid and were a lot more normal to them.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. Like, I certainly think that you're right that those conversations need to happen within those communities, and I think it is somewhat problematic for white people to be like trying to lead that. But at the same time, it's true that if someone is being shitty to like marginalized groups, like if someone is being homophobic, someone's being transphobic, I think that we all have a responsibility to call it out and to resist it.
I'm not saying that at all.
Yeah, but I think that at the same time, maybe the problem is when you call it out with the implication being that all fucking, all Pacifica people, or like all brown people, classic of them to be so backwards and homophobic when it's obviously a lot more complex than that.
Yeah. And look, I'll be honest. I'm not sure that the conversation around it has had that sort of like tenor to me. I feel like
I haven't seen much of that.
No. I feel like when Israel Folau did his thing, it was more like that. But I'm just sort of raising it because like I read this article and it really like it made me think about it more, and also the links to Christianity and in my own community as well, and what that sort of means for us. Because like while I say my family is not homophobic, like I do know of like friends of my father who live in like a small town in Madagascar, and they hide their sexuality. Like everyone knows,
right.
but they can't be open about it. So it's obviously not that. It's obviously not that simple.
Yeah, and I think that it's true. The other thing is you have to think about it in the context of there's obviously a shame. Like homophobia comes from a place of shame that can sometimes be internalized shame, and whether that's about, maybe you are queer yourself and feel intense shame about that, or even just, being shamed into how you act in the world as a man. And that's something that's particularly prevalent in sport. There was a comment on one of the Serious Danger, I think Instagram videos this week from someone who was like, I don't like the way that, you were endorsing or condoning the hypermasculine or like toxic masculinity of the biff in Origins. This is a conversation that Tom and I had. And like,
no.
I mean, I know, like, I'm like, look, I don't think you can cancel me for that. But it's like, just to be clear, like, obviously we acknowledge that there is like an intense fucking like hyper restricted model of masculinity that is, and sport is one of the forums in which that is most strictly imposed and enforced, right? And that's why like the two takes that I saw this week probably most frequently on this, the first was, isn't it ironic, or the hypocrisy of players arguing that they don't want to wear a pride jersey because sport shouldn't be.
We got so sidetracked, but this is a really, really good point. Sorry to interrupt, but yeah.
Yeah, well, that sport shouldn't be politicized, that's very hypocritical. You said it before, like given that they wear fucking gambling logos on their jersey, and like how hypocritical is that?
Or how many of these blokes like get accused of fucking beating their missus or whatever, or like or raping someone, or whatever, and like they're still one of the boys, are still cool, and like no one's saying like I'm not going to play next to you.
This is what you're up in arms about, and it's like, yes, sure, I think that's very obviously like a very obvious hypocrisy and inconsistency in this. And like, yes, it's a very silly excuse to be like, oh, well, I want to leave, politics out of it or whatever. The other take though that I saw is like these memes or just people making jokes about like, oh, but what about all those slaps on the bums or when they're getting in close on a tackle? Like effectively the classic like, oh, a bunch of men running around a field in little short shorts and they don't want to associate with gays. But that's so gay. And I was like, really?
What does that actually help? Like that is no better than that. That mural of fucking Trump kissing Putin?
No, I do. I know the one you mean. And it's just like,
that's just homophobic.
Wow,
it's actually not that, it's not that helpful.
Yeah, it literally is people trying to fight homophobia with homophobia. Like, and just the fucking, like, yeah. And it really does piss me off because it just conforms to that like really narrow definition of what is acceptable contact between men, like acceptable male fucking relationships. And yeah, that if you do get too close, if you're affectionate to a man as another man, or even if you just are touching another man, that's not masculine and you're gay.
On that, like what about that bloke who came out, and I actually remember this guy's name. It's Toby Rudolph.
The red-nosed reindeer?
Yeah, that's him. No, he plays for Cronulla. And,
yeah, I know him from the Christmas Carol.
He plays for Cronulla, and he's backing like the introduction of a Pride round, which is also someone in the Manly leadership is backing this now after this whole fiasco, or sort of led the calls for it, and now this guy has come out backing it, and he's also like recently said like and he's used the opportunity to be like, well, yeah, actually, like while I am heterosexual, like I also just love making out with dudes, and like. Like go off, King. Like I actually feel like that's like do you not think that's what do you think?
I don't know about this whole thing. Like, because I know this is often the use of MLM or like MSM, men who have sex with men, or MLM.
Yeah, I was like, do you mean like
multi-level marketing schemes? Exactly.
Well, I thought you missaid like
I was thinking of WLW, women loving women.
In my head, it was like what's the word? Like MRAs, and it was like MRAs kiss dudes. I was like, what the fuck?
Okay, no. We're talking about men who have sex with men, and this, that like using that term to just refer to men who have sex with other men, even if they might identify as straight. I don't really get this because to me, I'm like just refer to it as queer. But then again, there is a question of, well, do you have to respect their decision to identify as straight? But I don't know, because I think that like calling that straight just like perpetuates the idea that to be queer, it has to be everything about your life and it has to be like a massive thing and you have to be like consistently with someone of the same gender for your whole life to be actually really queer. When being queer can literally just be like you're just not straight. And honestly, I think everyone's a little bit queer.
Well, shout out to Josh Badge, who I don't know if they listen to this podcast, but I was talking to them very recently, and they said to me that they reminded me, because I did already know this, but I've forgotten, but like queer tends to be more of a political definition than it is a definition of your sexuality. It can be more about your politics than it is about, who it is that you sleep with, or, who you're attracted to. For example, like, you can be gay but not queer, and like to sort of explain that.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I wouldn't say that the definition of queer is settled.
No, exactly. But that's the way that they look at it. And like, that's part of the way I look at it, because I don't think you can use queer and gay interchangeably, which I think I was doing.
Well,
I think this is a very clear example of, whether or not Mr. Rudolph identifies as queer, like I would say that as queer behavior. And for him to come out and say that in the midst of all this, I mean, like he probably is benefiting from quite a lot of like, sort of like masculine privilege, in that, like, as far as queer people go, he's probably like, if it's a spectrum, he's probably like a 2 or a 3, right? And he plays league, and he is in a position where, his masculinity is not really in question. So he can come out and say this and sort of feel very comfortable about it. I think there still is a problem where, like, this might be the first step, but like, I don't think that especially after this, any queer people, rather gay people who play league will feel, whether it's at, like NRL level or just like at a lower level, will feel comfortable sort of like coming out and being like, well, yeah, that's me.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I remember reading this essay once. I could be wrong. I feel like it was maybe by someone called Suzanne Lister, but that name could be wrong. So maybe I'll put it in the show notes. But about like queering, I guess, as a verb, like queering as an activity. Is that funny to you, Jim?
No,
is that
it's
a
not.
funny joke?
No.
But the idea that you can kind of queer your relationships, you can queer your sex, even if you are a cis woman having sex with a cis man, you can queer that sex by breaking patriarchal and heterosexual expectations or boundaries.
Yep.
So like getting down to, the details of that, for example, like the idea of that like a man penetrates a woman, that like a man fucks a woman.
Yep.
And that's the idea of sex, like breaking that boundary, thinking more of like woman as the one who is fucking the man. For example, that as like an example of queer sex.
Say pegging.
No, but not necessarily pegging. That's the thing. Like, and she talks when she talks about it in the essay, she's like, think about it as like the woman is pulling the man's dick into her.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. That it's like actually just kind of rethinking, sex and relationships and gender. And so I guess that when someone comes out and says that they have sex with men, but they still identify as straight, I'm like, you don't necessarily. I don't think they need to say, well, I'm.
He has not said that he has sex with men.
Make out with men. But I'm like, well, you are queering masculinity and heterosexuality.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think that's great.
Yeah, it is really good. Yeah, it's important to do, but I'm just the reason why I'm putting that sort of qualifier on it that from a couple of minutes ago was because like I feel like while he is doing it, it's good. It's a smaller step than we would need. We don't necessarily have there's only one gay A-League player who's out at the moment, and like there isn't anyone like that in NRL. So,
and that's something I was thinking. Like when these things happen, I think it is a reminder that the echo chamber is real and homophobia is a bigger and it's a reality that like I honestly barely come into contact with these days in my circle. But yeah, like it is still a problem. And so when we have things like the religious discrimination bill debate before Parliament, or like when we're talking about queer issues from the Greens perspective, that the fight's not over, I guess is what I mean. Like, and this happens, it's a thing that happens with feminism too sometimes. Like, for example, with the erosion of abortion rights, though. I'm like, I get to a point where I'm like, things are all right. We're probably we're pretty much settled, right? That like gender isn't real. And I'm like, we're pretty much settled that like it's chill to be gay, right? And then I remember actually not completely settled, and like these rights are very much at risk. And we absolutely like it's still an active and ongoing fight.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think it's helpful to have these moments as well where that politics like bleeds into people's everyday lives, because like that's one of the challenges of the Greens as a movement, right, is to like politicize everyday life. So I like that even though some people apparently get pissed off about politicizing football, I like that's what this has done.
I fucking hate that. Everything is political. Like literally everything is political. The way you dress, the people who are your friends, the food you eat, like everything is political.
Yeah.
And to say that sport itself is not political is absolutely obscene and insane.
It's bullshit. Yeah. And so I think like the Greens as a movement having the challenge of like politicizing everyday life and reminding people that their everyday life is political, this kind of thing is like somewhat potentially helpful in that regard to remind you like, your fucking footy show that you watch, sorry, it is political because everything is.
Well, I mean, what they say when they say it's not political is that it either like doesn't threaten the status quo or it upholds it. And I think getting a bunch of dudes sitting around chatting about like another bunch of dudes, I think is incredibly political. It's like, it's by being devoid of identities that we deem political. It is political in a way as well.
I call the member for Ryan. Here.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'm Elizabeth Watson-Brown. The people of Ryan want their politicians to put the needs of the community and the sustainability of our environment ahead of corporate interests and petty politicking. Despite what's often been said about the Greens in the media and in this very chamber, our ideas, I reckon, are really just common sense for most people. These are all common sense values shared by the majority of people in Ryan, and I would suggest across the country. And I think if everyone genuinely listened to their communities, perhaps they'd realise this too.
So this week's call to action, I figured, it would be good to support an LGBT cause if you can donate. So Black Rainbow is the Indigenous suicide prevention and mental health support organisation for queer folks in Australia. We'll put the link to donate to Black Rainbow in the show notes. Are there any other organisations that you can think of off the top of your head, Jim, that are good to support in this space?
I would say Switchboard is probably the one I would say.
Yep, cool. We can put a link in the show notes. Yep. And in terms of your Greens call to action, I think just a very easy one, although apparently not very, still too difficult for Jim, is to just watch and share the new Greens MPs first speeches. If you can figure out how to use your laptop to stream things, which Jim can't, you can go to the Australian Greens Facebook page. They have the events for all of the upcoming speeches. On Monday, it'll be Penny Allman-Payne. On Tuesday, we've got Max Chandler Mather and David Shoebridge. And then on Wednesday, it's Barbara Pocock. I think that's all of them. But just good ones to kind of boost and really get those foundational introductions for each of our brand new MPs out there into the world. Before we sign off, Jim, do you have anything else to plug?
No, I just want to just let the record show that I am not stupid. I am merely lazy. Okay, that's all it is.
Okay, all right, sure. The record shows. But where can people? What should people do? Read Pedestrian.
Read Pedestrian. And also, please read Pedestrian and give us some feedback. Please read more of our political stuff because sometimes we struggle to get people to read that, which is a problem across the board, not just for us. But also, if you wanted to follow me more, you can follow me on Twitter. My @ is the Jim Malo, which is ironic. Before anyone asks. And I'm tweeting a little bit more than I usually do, but I'm starting to loosen up there a bit. So I don't know, follow me on Be Real. Don't do that. I don't want you to follow me if I don't know you. All right.
Wow. Okay. Some mixed messages, I guess, but that's fine.
Oh, God.
One message that's very clear is please leave us a review for the podcast. You can rate and review it on Apple Podcasts or wherever you happen to be listening. It really does help the show. Please tell people about Serious Danger if you know someone who is maybe curious about politics or looking for a different kind of take on politics in Australia. Tell them about Serious Danger. You can talk about it on social media. You can follow us on @SeriousDangerAU on Twitter, Instagram and YouTube. And of course, if you'd like to support the show even more, you can become a patron. So subscribe to us on Patreon. For all the info, just head to seriousdangerpod.com. Oh, Jim has something.
Before we go,
what do you want, Jim?
I recommend subscribing to the Patreon because I subscribed when they did their first Patreon episode, which was the one about this tattooed land, and it was one of my favorite episodes of a podcast this year. So well worth your $3.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a good endorsement. Thank you, Jim. You should tweet that to your 30,000 followers.
You're trying to get me to correct you, aren't you? And I'm not going to do it because that would make me seem conceited.
Anyway, thanks for coming on the show, Jim. Tom will be back next week, so don't worry. We'll have someone who knows how to use a computer. Until next time, bye, everyone.
Serious Danger Australia.